The FBI and the DOJ have announced their new policies in the new domestic war on extremism. And so we're going to break down exactly what's happening. We're going to check in with the Department of Justice, which announced they're creating a new domestic terror unit. And of course, the FBI, which is going to be using this new unit and these new investigatory powers to go do whatever they want. Let's check in with the feds. Matthew G. Olsen is the Assistant Attorney General. He is going to be the Chief Prosecutor. This is the division that is going to be actually prosecuting the cases that come through the doors. FBI will be out there using these new tools to go investigate the crimes. Once they find somebody who they think committed a crime, they'll bring it over to the DOJ. The Assistant Attorney General, his office, will prosecute the crimes. FBI is Jill Sanborn. She's the Executive Assistant Director, and so they are the FBI. They go out and they do the things that we all know the FBI does. They go in and investigate these crimes. Sometimes they arguably create the crimes, if you ask me, but they're out there doing the investigation. And so these two are really the lieutenants in this war. Their generals are of course, Merrick Garland, the U.S. Attorney General, Christopher Wray over the executive director at the FBI. And so both Matthew Olsen and Jill Sanborn were testifying today in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. They were asking them questions about their investigations into January 6th, and they were providing an update to the Senate about their framework, about what they are investigating here in 2022, especially as it relates to domestic terrorism. 1/11, I think, is very symmetrical to 9/11. 9/11 was a response to international terror. This is their response to domestic terror. This, of course, is taking place just days after the one-year anniversary of the 1/6 attacks. And so this is the big announcement of this new domestic war on extremism. And so they're explaining the framework. They're providing a status update, as it were, to the senators, but they're announcing what they are going to be doing. They're announcing some actual policy changes that I'm hopeful that the American people just don't gloss over and get lost in the politics of these hearings. So here is the first clip. This is, again, Matthew Olsen. Matthew Olsen is testifying, and this is just a very, very short snippet. If we're talking about domestic extremism, if we're talking about all these dangerous threats, if we're talking January 6th and these racists and militias and all of these organizations, what are you talking about specifically? Domestic extremism, domestic terrorism. Can you define it? Here's what he says.
While there is no single federal crime that's labeled domestic terrorism, the criminal code does define domestic terrorism, and this definition provides us with expanded authorities, including enhanced sentencing for terrorism offenses.
The definition under the law is a definition. It's not a criminal charge, but he's saying we're going to take this definition and we're going to expand our powers, and we're going to use that for enhanced sentencing. We're going to expand our powers. We're going to take something that is in the law and interpret it differently to expand our powers. Let's listen to that one more time.
While there is no single federal crime that's labeled domestic terrorism, the criminal code does define domestic terrorism, and this definition provides us with expanded authorities, including enhanced sentencing for terrorism offenses.
So nobody changed the law. Congress didn't pass a new bill. He just decided that this new definition, the current definition, gives him a new interpretation that he can use to his advantage. So we're framing that out. He's making a change, and he's going to announce what it is in a minute. But he's going to tell us specifically what is this new power that you just created for yourself by interpreting a definition of a statute, under statute. What does this apply to? Who are you applying to? Who's in the scope of this inquiry? Here's what he says.
That is individuals in the United States who seek to commit violent criminal acts in furtherance of domestic, social, or political goals. Domestic violent extremists are often motivated by a mix of ideologies and personal grievances. We've seen a growing threat from those who are motivated by racial animus, as well as those who ascribe to extremist, anti-government, and anti-authority ideologies.
Racists, anti-government people. Got it. So that's what this new power is going to be applied to. Anybody who they claim is a racist and everybody who is anti-government. So Okay, so that is basically inclusive, as we're going to hear from Ms. Sanborn over at the FBI, of anybody who is oppositional to the COVID measures that we've been experiencing over the last 2 years, because all of those were done under the guise, under the power, alleged power, that the government had over all of our lives. So now that we've defined what this is, now that we know where this power came from and who it is being applied to, anybody with any anti-government sentiment, what are you going to do about this? Here's what the DOJ says.
In addition, I've decided to establish a domestic terrorism unit to augment our existing approach. This group of dedicated attorneys will focus on the domestic terrorism threat, helping to ensure that these cases are handled properly and effectively coordinated across the Department of Justice and across the country.
The Department of Justice, which already has divisions more than I could even name, is now going to create yet another division. And this unit is only going to be focused on domestic terror so that they can make sure these cases are prosecuted. This same agency that is one of the biggest federal agencies that we have, that has U.S. attorneys' offices, I think, everywhere, and is now well funded as a result of what happened on January 6th to go out there and prosecute everything everywhere. I am creating a new domestic terror unit. Let's listen one more time.
In addition, I've decided to establish a domestic terrorism unit to augment our existing approach. This group of dedicated attorneys will focus on the domestic terrorism threat, helping to ensure that these cases are handled properly and effectively coordinated across the Department of Justice and across the country.
So now that we have this new prosecuting agency, this new unit within the Department of Justice, this group of people who are only going to focus on domestic terror, now that they're there, they better get some cases. We know that they've been working hard to go find them previously. We've talked about them before. We spent a lot of time talking about the FBI's involvement in the Whitmer case. Watch that video up here. They weren't very useful there. So many people are saying they may have been the ones who caused the entire thing to happen. Entrapment. So the FBI now, of course, is going to be responsible for investigating these new domestic terror cases. And so let's see how they are interpreting this. What does Ms. Sanborn, the Assistant Executive Director at the FBI, what does she say? And remember what we're talking about. Domestic terror. We're all really familiar with international terror. We've had that seared into our brains ever since 9/11, and Bush and Obama and Trump, and the list goes on, about every single president scaring everybody to death about ISIS and all of the horrible things happening in the world. And so now that we're familiar with the tools that were used in international terror, are they going to be bringing those same things here? Are they going to be saying that that type of terrorism demands the same type of response, the use of the same types of tools here because it's terrorism? Let's see what Ms. Sanborn has to say.
Additionally, as we head into 2022, we assess racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists and anti-government or anti-authority violent extremists will continue to pose the most serious threats. And as such, the FBI has prioritized anti-government or anti-authority violent extremism to be commensurate with the threat posed by homegrown violent extremism, ISIS, and racially or ethnically motivated violent extremism.
Commensurate, equal to. The new war on domestic terror is going to be commensurate with the old war on international terror. So the same level of supplies and materials and money and resources that you would expect internationally coming domestically, because it's commensurate. And she's making this announcement in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. She says some people are very upset with what they have seen happening out there around this country. Some people are even upset about the election.
Many domestic violent extremists also plotted to conduct attacks due to personalized grievances, including anger at government responses to COVID-19, immigration policies, and perceived election fraud.
One more time.
Many domestic violent extremists also plotted to conduct attacks due to personalized grievances, including anger at government responses to COVID-19, immigration policies, and perceived election fraud.
Mad about immigration in your state? Mad about the lockdowns? Upset that your kid has to put a mask on to go to school? You one of those parents that were screaming at the school boards or upset with them? Well, you might be a new domestic terrorist. So now that this is announced, this is the FBI announcing this is what they're working on. She's going to communicate that the biggest threat in the country, these types of people. Here it is.
And the greatest terrorism threat facing the United States today remains that posed by lone actors or small cells who typically radicalize online and look to use easily accessible weapons to attack soft targets. This includes both homegrown violent extremists inspired primarily by foreign terrorist organizations, as well as domestic violent extremism.
All right, so now we've got a twofer. We've got the FBI is willing to go out there and prosecute these cases. We've heard from her. This is a high priority. It's the biggest threat that America is facing. They're going to be prosecuting and investigating these cases at a capacity that is commensurate with international war on terror. And so they're going full steam ahead, being very aggressive with this. And they're even so aggressive that they're telling you exactly what they're going to do right on their website, right at the FBI.gov. You can see they posted a memo over there. Here's what it says. This is what they are doing. And let's be very clear about this. The Federal Criminal Code provides a definition of domestic terrorism. Okay, it's not a crime, it's a definition that covers activities that include the following. And look how broad this definition is, okay? It's so wide you could drive a truck through it. Involves acts dangerous to human life that are a violation of the law. Okay, well, there you go. Something that's dangerous to human life that's a violation of the law. That's subsection A. And B, it appears to be intended, so it appears to be, to whom, I don't know. And it's intended, it only appears to be, whether it actually is intended or whether it's objectively presumed to be intentional or it's subjectively presumed, we don't know. It appears to be intended to intimidate or coerce a civilian population. So intimidate a civilian population, what does that mean? Does that mean you post something on Facebook? I don't know. Does it mean to influence the policy of a government by intimidation or coercion? I don't know. Is this video trying to influence policy of a government? Problem. Yeah, I mean, I have a channel that's trying to influence policy. Sure, I'm not trying to intimidate anybody, but I wouldn't want to ask Christopher Wray his thoughts about this show because I had a lot of problems with the lockdowns. I thought that they were completely unconstitutional. Did I just say that? Uh-oh. All right. So what are they going to do now that they have this new power? Where incorporated into other authorities, now that they've interpreted the law this way, okay, now that they've done this little concoction, it's not actually a law, it's a definition that they're rewriting for themselves. But here's what they're posting at the FBI. They say, where incorporated into other authorities, this definition, not a bill, not an update from the law, Congress didn't update anything. This definition provides us with an array of expanded investigative tools and sentencing enhancements in domestic terrorism matters. It just created it. Came, I don't know, from a definition. It was the same definition that existed 2 days ago, but today it provides them with an array of expanded investigative tools. So that's pretty cool how that works, isn't it? Judges now can issue nationwide search warrants in cases involving domestic terrorism, just as they're authorized to do in cases involving international terrorism. Typically, judges can only issue warrants pertaining to their districts. This expanded authority reduces delays and burdens on the investigations with regional or national scope. So it's a lot of work to do these things, and so they want judges to just rubber stamp search warrants a lot more quickly, which of course they'll do. And now that they can do it nationwide, they just need to go to one judge in D.C. who just hates every single political opponent that these people also hate, and boom, warrant, 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 warrant. Judges may grant orders giving investigators greater access to certain educational and taxpayer records. So now if you're sort of in one of these investigations under the U.S. Code, they're going to reinterpret that definition to allow them to do this, is what they're saying. And so that's going to be great. So taxpayer records, educational records, whatever they want, they can go get it. Investigative and law enforcement officers have additional authority to share intercepted communications and derivative evidence. So when they get it, they can share it with each other. Government lawyers also have additional authority to share grand jury matter now. So now U.S. prosecutors can share this stuff with local law enforcement because they've just opened it up. Some statutes and other ones will carry enhanced statutory maximums if the offense involves efforts intended to facilitate terrorism. Okay, so this is all new powers that they just said these are ours now. It says when we incorporated these into other authorities, this gives us this new power. Where did it come from? He said so. Olsen from the Department of Justice said we have this power now. I determined that. And the FBI is going to go out and do their bidding. In addition, the FBI memo says the Federal Criminal Code contains a definition of federal crime of terrorism. Not a actual crime, but a definition. And what that means is an offense that, quote, is calculated to influence or affect the conduct and violates one of the enumerated statutes prohibiting one of the other offenses, something related to mass destruction. And so with all of that, here's what we're doing is we're interpreting this a little bit differently. That definition includes both these things. And with respect to that, here's what we're saying. Congress has extended the statute of limitations, created a rebuttable presumption of pretrial detention for the offenses listed for the federal crime of terrorism, so we can keep people in custody indefinitely by creating a rebuttable presumption that they should be held. So rather than saying the default should be that they should be released, the default is they should be held. Rebuttable presumption. So normally in America, we say innocent until proven guilty. We let people out. We do everything possible to let them out of custody. The least onerous conditions to secure their reappearance back in court. But here, not going to do that. Here, the default, what they want is we're going to keep them in custody and they can rebut that presumption. We're going to let them out. Any act that is indictable under any provision, they can use some RICO stuff. Sentencing guidelines for sentencing enhancements going to be involved. Upward departures for any offenses that seem to be terror-related. So they're going to ask for sort of aggravated terms, and Congress has authorized some additional penalties. So the DOJ and the FBI have rolled this out, and they did it right under the noses of the Congress people who were there. Now, Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, and many others, they asked some hard questions of the FBI and the DOJ, but not about this. Not about this new domestic war on terrorism. All of this is just rolling out because everybody is so busy worried about the other political things happening in the world. Meanwhile, Republicans and Democrats alike just let this continued federal encroachment into local affairs continue. What do you say about that? What do you think about this? Are you happy now that we're living in this new domestic war on extremism environment? I'm not happy about it. Can't suspect that you are either. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Look forward to hearing from you and seeing you on the next one.